I found out I have a secret brother, and it did not break the family apart.
Secret brothers usually don't, right?
I don't know. I
Right?
only have a sister that I know of. No secret brothers. A few years ago, I, 27 female at the time, received a message on Instagram from Philip, fake name, 32 male at the time, claiming to be my brother. By the way, this comes from user Mysterious Care 7024. And if you want to submit your own stories, go to r/okstorytime subreddit. For some context, I am the oldest to my parents, and I have one younger sister, 24 female at the time. My sister and I are relatively close considering we live in different states now, and I am very close to my mom. My dad and I have always had a strained relationship, but it has become significantly better since I moved away to go to college at 18. It is important to know that my dad is adopted. My grandparents were wonderful people, but passed away several years ago. After they passed, my dad found his bio mom after a lot of insisting on my end. I never really felt like I fit in with my dad's side of the family and had hoped meeting his biological family would help connect some dots for me. Okay, that makes more sense now. When my dad met bio grandma, it didn't go very well. She got pregnant as a teen and had to hide the pregnancy to avoid her mom from forcing her to get termination. As a result, she developed a chip on her shoulder. When dad and her first met, she referred to him as her son and told him that as his mother, she wasn't happy with his behavior. My dad makes jokes to ease the tension and was lovingly teasing my sister and I during this encounter. She also called my dad by the name she gave him when he was born and not his actual name. I'm glad we met her, but I will never have a meaningful relationship with her. She isn't my grandma, but I have a lot of respect for the sacrifices she made to give birth to my dad. Bio grandma let my dad know that his half-siblings didn't know he existed, and she has it in her will that upon her death, they will be told of his existence. When he told me this, I was 17, 18 around that time. I told him that would be a terrible way to find out you had a secret sibling because you can never get closer from your parent. I asked my parents then and there if I had any secret siblings, and if they told me then that I wouldn't be mad. I just wanted to know. They both laughed and assured me that I didn't, and that my little sister Renee was my only sibling. Fast forward to when I was 27. I was sitting in the office talking to my husband about what our lives would look like when our baby arrived. I was barely in my third trimester with our firstborn. My husband John left the room to do laundry, and I was lying in our guest bed trying to gather the energy to get up and go to bed. I received a message from a strange guy on Instagram whose account had a blue check mark, and I considered opening the message. I then realized what a strange guy typically sends to a woman, and decided against opening the message. I felt weird about having a potential saucy pic on my phone without telling John, so I went into our room and handed him my phone and asked him to read it to me. I figured we can both laugh about it and then go to bed. When John began reading the message, his face went from gleeful to pale, and he told me he didn't feel comfortable reading it. I laughed and told him he was being ridiculous and just to read it. The message read, "Hello, OP. My name is Philip. Since 2012, I have known that I'm your half-brother. Your father, blank space, OP's father, is my biological father. Your father and I have only spoken twice in my life. I am 32. Since having a child of my own, it has weighed heavily on my mind that you do not know of my existence. I decided to reach out to you for that exact reason alone, to just say hello and let you know I exist. I do not want anything from you or your family, and I certainly do not wish you any harm. I hope you have led a wonderful, joyous life. If you do feel the need or want to contact me, my number is blank and my email is blank. All the best, your brother, Philip."
Dude.
That is crazy.
That's a saucy tea pick right there.
Yeah, you got more than a saucy pick.
Oh my gosh.
You got yourself a saucy brother.
I wouldn't even know where to begin if I got that in my DM. I would be sending him a DNA kit, being like, "All right, brother, let's check this out."
My first thought was assuming that this person was phishing and somehow had my dad's personal information. So I called my mom and told her someone had dad's info, and that I just wanted to let them know. My mom asked who sent the message claiming to be my brother and laughed, telling me how crazy that was. My dad was still awake, so she handed the phone to him, and I told him someone was claiming to be my brother and had his information. My dad asked for their name, and when I told him, he told me it was true. He briefly explained that my brother was an accident before my mom, and he had always paid child support, but because he couldn't stand my brother's mother, and since they lived in a different state, he decided it was best for him to dip out of Philip's life. He started crying. My dad is the old school type of guy who doesn't cry, so this was unsettling, and handed the phone back to my mom. My mom told me she always knew about Philip and tried to get my dad to play a more active role in his life, but never felt it was her place to press the issue or to tell my sister and I. I told her the cat was out of the bag and she needed to tell my sister now.
Yeah.
My mom was hesitant since my sister was about to begin finals in college, and she wanted to wait for Renee to be out of finals before dropping this news on her.
That's
not a bad idea.
Yeah. Because you're worrying about getting A's and then
You're already stressed out in school. You're trying to focus on school.
ooh.
I told her that it was no longer in her control and she needed to finally do the right thing and come clean.
Ooh.
We hung up and she called Renee. About 10 minutes later, my baby sister called me in tears asking if this was true. This absolutely broke me. Renee and I stayed on the phone all night just crying. It's hard to explain to someone who has never been through something like this, but we were mourning the loss of our brother for our entire lives. We would talk about our childhood and then think how unfair it was that Dad went to our soccer games but never his. How Dad taught us how to drive but not Philip. How Dad gave us financial advice our entire lives, but Philip didn't have his wisdom to guide him.
I don't
and
know.
so on.
I don't know. Philip's got a blue check mark on Instagram.
I feel like that was the drive that Philip needed more than
I think
having a father
Philip figured
figure.
a few things out.
I get asked a lot if I was angry with my dad for hiding this from me when I had given him an out when I was a teenager. The truth is, I wasn't. I was disappointed and heartbroken, but never angry. I blame the pregnancy hormones, but Philip's mental health became my top priority in all of this. After all, he was the child in this situation. Philip had given me his phone number, so I created a group text with him and Renee, and we told him that we had no idea he existed. We let him know that we would love to get to know our niece/nephew and that we wanted nothing more than to get to know him and how sorry we were that he didn't have Dad in his life. Philip had fallen asleep as soon as he sent me the initial message to me, so Renee and I didn't hear from him until the following day. We talked all day once Philip woke up. I found out Philip owns a company to help support the mental health of other dads, as well as a podcast, and he talks about not having a dad in a lot of his IG reels. Okay. His daughter is something he constantly bragged about, and he had told me he had a dream that I was pregnant and that it was time for him to reach out to me.
Dude, that is a powerful dream. Wow. I've heard many a story of people having dreams like this. Not like this, but like
But like future dreams?
yeah.
Yeah. Or like deja vu dreams? Yeah. He let me know that he stalked my Facebook and Instagram for several years. He first found my accounts when he learned my sister and I existed. When he first learned we existed, we were young kids and he was 21. So he wanted to wait to make contact until Renee was 18 at a minimum. When she finally turned 18, he got scared and kept avoiding it until he had his dream. It quickly became obvious that we have very different backgrounds. My sister and I were born and raised in one of the more rural Western states, whereas Philip was born in New York City and raised in Los Angeles.
Wow.
The fact my secret brother had a verified IG account, owned a company, was a professional model, was married into a very wealthy/well-known family, was a professional singer, etc., made the whole thing feel like it wasn't real.
So probably it was the best for him that he didn't live with you. That's what I'm getting from this.
That's what I'm getting as well, that maybe you should give up your kids for adoption.
Yeah, maybe
you know
you
what, cut that. I don't like that.
Maybe you shouldn't have a father figure.
I
in
don't
your
like
life.
any of that. No, we can't make that funny. My husband would just shake his head anytime we learned something new about Philip and tell me that only I would have something like this happen to them. A month later, Philip flew into town to meet us. I remember I was literally shaking, waiting for my sister to drive him to my house. John was worried about our baby since he had never seen me like that before. Being that I have been through this once with my bio grandma, I told him that this is just how I get, but I would be fine once Philip arrived. Philip jumped out of my sister's car and gave me and my husband a big bear hug once he arrived. Philip is a big teddy bear, I quickly learned, and just wanted to shower us with love, which was very obvious in the video he created about meeting us. So there's a video about this. My dad especially after going through what he did with his bio mom, was very skeptical of Philip coming out. He initially said he wouldn't ever meet him. The morning after Philip arrived, my dad called and wanted to make sure I was okay since I had effectively invited a stranger into my home for a week while I'm pregnant. I told him that Philip was wonderful, and it wasn't fair that he was making Philip pay for the mistakes his bio mom made him. Later that day, my siblings and I visited John at the winery he works at and met my parents there. My dad and Philip ended up stepping out and having an hour-long heart-to-heart outside. Philip has never gone into much detail about what was said, and neither has my dad, but they did say it was a very good and necessary conversation. During all of this, Philip's marriage was falling apart. He spent his trip leaning on me for marital advice and support. His now ex-wife is not someone I'm a huge fan of, but at the time I was trying my best to remain neutral as I barely knew Philip and had never met his wife. 6 months later, I had my baby, finished the school year, and decided that it was time I brought my family down with Renee and met Philip's family. I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. Like I said, my brother had married into a well-known/wealthy family. My husband is a bit of a redneck at heart and wanted to make a statement of, "This is who I am, take it or leave it." When he met our ex-sister-in-law, we'll call her Julie, and her family. John did this by wearing and using a pocket knife. I genuinely didn't think anything of it. Where we come from, all men have one. It's not really considered a weapon, but more of a practical tool. Riley?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have one all the time.
Okay.
I'm not trying to stab anyone. I'm just like, how many boxes I have to open around here? A lot.
Julie had met us and a few minutes later received a package from some company wanting her to post about their products, and she was struggling to open her package. John then grabbed his pocket knife, flipped it open, and offered to open it for her. You should have seen the look on this woman's face. It was like he had pulled a pew-pew on her.
No, just open a box. What? I literally called that.
Yeah. She frantically told him it was okay, and she grabbed a kitchen knife instead. She then assured us that it was understandable that people from our background would want to bring a weapon into the big city. We tried to explain that it wasn't big enough to be a weapon, but there was no convincing her. Philip found this whole interaction to be very humorous.
And pulled his phone out to record it.
Our niece absolutely adored our son, and we couldn't separate them. It was very cute, but it seemed to make Julie very uncomfortable. A few hours later, we went to the house Julie was house-sitting, and she kept making a huge deal about how billionaires lived there and how huge the house was. Renee and I grew up in a rural state where the dollar goes further than it does in LA. We grew up in the upper middle class as well, and I consider us to be very privileged compared to our peers, although our parents are by no means billionaires, let alone millionaires. When Renee and I went to this house, we were shocked on how small it was for all the hype. It was roughly 2,000 square feet and had 4 bedrooms. My sister and I grew up in a bigger home, and while the house was nice, I wasn't awestruck by it, by any means. This also upset Julie. Julie's family came by later to meet us as well as Philip's mom, Mary. It became clear to me that Mary was just trying to social climb and impress Julie's family. She made ignorant remarks such as, "Oh, your dad's tall? I had no idea," when she is a short woman and my brother is 6'2" and I'm 6 foot. I don't know where she thought she got the height from since it obviously isn't her, and how she can make that comment while cramming her neck up to look at mine with a straight face. But to each their own. Julie's family and Mary brought dinner over, and we were trying to have a small talk. During this time, they were either nitpicking Philip or giving Renee, John, the baby, or myself backhanded compliments. I tend to have a short fuse, so I made a few jabs back at them. I don't remember exactly what I said at that point. After I did this, Julie's family started talking in French and pointing at us.
Oh, they're French?
They're
Or are they
French.
Canadian?
I
Because if they're French, this checks out. This checks out. Dude, some French people are kind of rude.
By this point, Renee and I were done, and we went back to Philip's apartment for the night. 2 days later, we had finally convinced Philip to quit being Julie's errand boy and to go do something fun with us when Julie decided to keep Philip's bipolar meds from him and take their daughter somewhere else and not tell him where she was. What? I was giving Julie the benefit of the doubt other than being snobby, but now she's kind of cuckoo.
Yeah.
Mary had also been calling and texting him, calling him all sorts of names and telling him he was an unfit parent. Mind you, I am a public school teacher. I see countless unfit parents every year, and I can spot them a mile away. Philip is an amazing father and is by no means unfit. At this point, Philip has introduced us to some of his cousins, and we were talking with them when Philip stepped out to talk to his mom to find out where his daughter was. I told his cousins that this is insane, that his daughter was kidnapped from him and he's acting like it's normal. Acting like it's a normal Tuesday. They let me know that his mom is completely insane, as is Julie, and they gang up on Philip and pull this stuff all the time. We all left LA grateful that we didn't have to live in that heck any longer. I also left completely impressed that my brother has been surrounded by that all his life and still turned out to be a selfless, caring person and an amazing dad dedicated to helping improve this generation of dads. You know what's not unfortunate, Riley?
What's that?
That you can go listen to full episodes with stories just like this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts at. Just search OK Storytime, and we'll be there with a plethora of stories just like this one. We have another relevant update, but before we go into that, what would you do as OP and what would you do as Philip?
OP? Philip, dude, this doesn't look good as your sister. I know we just met, but I don't know. This doesn't look like me, like a good spot. And if I was Philip, being a content creator in LA, there are a lot of fake chicks out there.
Yep.
I would have, growing up, probably found a solid chick.
Go on.
That wasn't all about the money. And even if she was French, that she was cool. But I mean, I come from where OP and the hubby come from. Like, that was me going to LA. I was like, whoa. Thankfully, I'm not around a lot of fake people. Oh my gosh, I would not like this place if that was the case.
As a born and raised LA person, usually the fake people, I'm not going to lie, are the people that aren't from here.
Really?
Like the transplants. Usually it's like that's more common. We are still in contact, although I'm not sure I ever want to go to LA again and let my child witness all that crazy now that he's more aware of what's going on. I am so happy Philip came forward and introduced himself to me. We joke that there's probably a dozen more of us scattered throughout the world. My dad was in the Navy. We've asked my parents if there's more, and while they assure us there isn't, I don't believe them. And that's the end of that story.
Dang.
I think the main point here is to tell Philip to be happy because he's done such great things in this foundation and that he's built that he does not deserve an unhappy life or a stressful life that he already has, or it seems like he has. I would, again, what I said earlier, invite him out to stay with you guys for a little bit and bring his daughter, experience that side of his family, and get out of LA.
Yeah.
As an LA native, it's always nice to get out of LA for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.